What's up, everyone, and welcome to the weekly Q&A. Real quick, before questions, we need to send a shout out and a thank you to Kinwood, who joined our Patreon at the Jedi Council level. Thank you so much, Kinwood. That is insanely generous, so we look forward to having you in the council.
For our first question, Diabologist asks if we've already seen Crimson Dawn in the Book of Boba Fett trailers.
So that's an interesting little shout out. We've seen in some of the, especially the TV spots, these red ninja looking people jumping from rooftop to rooftop. It looks like Fennec Shand is going to capture one at some point. Well, they're wearing an outfit that's kind of similar to something that some Crimson Dawn agents wear in War of the Bounty Hunters. So will we see Crimson Dawn in the Book of Boba Fett?
I think that is a cool idea. I would love for that to be who those people are.
I think that there's certainly potential for it. I mean, this is an underworld show, and it's Boba Fett kind of carving out his piece of that pie. So we're already in the underworld. It makes sense that we would see people like Black Sun, the Pike Syndicate, Crimson Dawn as well. Right now, I'm going to lean towards that's probably unlikely. I think that's more coincidence than anything else. The color is obviously there. They're wearing a crimson-ish color. But I think that's probably not something that Charles Soule was setting up. But that's just me not getting my hopes up.
Maybe they could be just like other bounty hunters that work for the Ithorian that we see in the trailer.
That's my best guess right now. It looks like all that's going to take place on Tatooine. I think Fennec Shand is bringing one of those prisoners to the Ithorian person. So that seems like they're probably one of his hench people. But maybe he works for Crimson Dawn. Maybe he's like a Crimson Dawn lieutenant. We don't know yet. I think that for now, the safe bet is probably not. But I really do hope that if we're dealing with criminal syndicates in this show, I don't want them to keep making up new ones. Mm-hmm. I would much rather them revisit Crimson Dawn, Black Sun, the Pike Syndicate. I'm hopeful that all those people sitting around the table aren't just new syndicates we've never heard of that are supposed to be a big deal or something.
Especially if Crimson Dawn has been mentioned in a movie like Solo, like a big theatrically released film.
Right, that is, honestly, that makes more sense than Black Sun or Pike Syndicate. Well, Pike Syndicate was in Solo as well, but those are ones that people would recognize that it's been a while since we've seen Crimson Dawn in live action, but that's a name that my parents or people like them might be able to go oh yeah, those guys from Solo.
Mm-hmm. Graham Gaskill wants to know why so many people want flashbacks to happen in the Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Ahsoka.
I think it's a combination of I feel like it makes sense for these shows. I mean, Book of Boba Fett for sure is going to have flashbacks. Again, talking about those TV spots, we see them going to the Slave One parked in Jabba's palace. I guess no one figured out how to hotwire that thing in all those years, but that's still parked there. And Boba Fett is wearing those robes that he was wearing in The Mandalorian. So I think I would rather see him escape the Sarlacc pit and recover instead of just, it's the old show don't tell kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's okay, if Star Wars is going to keep telling stories about characters that we already know and we've already seen, why not show them in times of their life that we already know and have already seen?
And, I mean, the allure of seeing Obi-Wan and Anakin in the Clone Wars wearing the Clone Wars armor, which that was created because of animation purposes, and it was just too hard to animate all of the cloth for the robes, so they're stick him in armor. Now, we Star Wars fans, we like the armor. We want to see the armor in live action.
Sure.
So
make that corporate synergy happen by giving
right.
us things that we've seen in animation in live action.
I know. I mean, just little things like that get fans excited. It doesn't take a whole lot to make us clap and point, be I know that. Now, while I do think that's very exciting, you got to keep it in balance. Last week we were talking about whether or not Maul would be an Obi-Wan Kenobi. And, I mean, we could see him in flashbacks or something. But to me, that's going a little bit too far. Seeing flashbacks of Obi-Wan and Anakin, I think that's for sure going to be able to serve the story of Obi-Wan Kenobi, which is probably going to be about the relationship between Obi-Wan and Anakin.
Right.
So seeing flashbacks, like, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But a flashback with Maul, it's like, okay, now you're just trying to cram too much stuff in there just for the sake of seeing that stuff in live action again.
Yeah, if Maul were going to be a main part of the story for the Kenobi show, then yeah, I would want to see him. But Anakin is part of the main story, Anakin/Vader, so that makes more sense than throwing someone like Maul in.
Right. I think a lot of the people who want to see flashbacks, including me, a lot of it does come from just, we want to see that stuff in live action. And that's alluring, but it shouldn't it shouldn't be done just for the sake of it. It needs to be done in service of the story.
Chris Chatham asks what process we think there is to making the Darksaber versus normal lightsabers.
Yeah, so is that like a different kind of kyber crystal? Do you need to pour a different kind of force energy into it? What makes a Darksaber instead of just a regular old lightsaber?
Darkness.
Well, that's what I probably would have guessed when we didn't know much about it. But then it was like, no, it was made by the first Mandalorian Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay. To me, I think it's probably just a completely different technology. It looks different. It kind of acts different. It sounds different. So I think they're classifying it as a lightsaber, but it's like, it's lightsaber adjacent, maybe.
I just had an idea.
Okay.
I don't know if this is possible. I mean, anything is possible in the world of Star Wars, I think, if the writers can make it work. But what if the power source for the Darksaber is some kind of kyber crystal infused with Beskar?
Okay.
Bring a little bit of both worlds into it.
I like that. So I do think that in Star Wars Rebels, Kanan says when he's teaching Sabine that the crystals will react to each other. So, and I do think that the Darksaber has a crystal in it. But yeah, like maybe a kyber crystal Beskar something.
Hybrid.
Yeah. Like, I like the idea of the Darksaber.
Maybe it's like encased in Beskar.
Right. I like the idea of the Darksaber being almost technological more than strictly spiritual, the way I would say that the Jedi, I mean, obviously there's technology to it, but they bond through the Force with their crystal. Mm-hmm. But it makes sense that a Mandalorian who, like, their technology was developed around combating the Jedi, that maybe a Mandalorian Jedi would do something a little bit different, a little more technological to create this very different and unique blade.
Yeah, it goes more with their culture.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think you might be onto something.
Joshua Bernard wants to know why Luke was allowed to attack the Death Star when so many other pilots were around.
So they're specifically talking about, like, at the end, during the medal ceremony, there's a lot of pilots in the crowd. What were they all doing? Why does this Luke guy get to go up and fight? I do think they kind of mention that in a joking way and from a certain point of view. The Cole Tackbright story, aka Fake Wedge, he's basically just upset that he doesn't get to fly, and Wedge and Luke get to. I mean,
Biggs talked to him up a lot, said he was the best bush pilot in the Outer Rim territories, so, I mean, how do you argue with that?
Biggs, wingman for life, literally and figuratively.
He doesn't need any credentials, they just, they assume and believe that that's correct.
I think there's also an element of, he's at least seen the Death Star.
True, yeah.
Like Wedge.
The only one that's been in it.
Yeah, Wedge sees it and is like, look at the size of that thing. Like, he's immediately scared of it. Luke has at least seen it, knows what he's in for. So I do think that there's something there. But I would also argue that all those other pilots, we know that the Yavin base was partially evacuated. Like, Mon Mothma had to get out of there in case the Death Star did blow it up. So they were probably escorting rebellion VIPs. And then once the Death Star was blown up, they're like, okay, now let's evacuate everyone else. But real quick, medal ceremony. Let's do that. We'll knock that out. Everyone join in. Let's have a little party.
Well, plus, I wonder if, like, after the Battle of Scarif, word started to get around about this thing, and maybe they were like, no thanks. I'll stay home that day.
Yeah, they all showed up and they're like, oh, we missed it? Dang. I mean, good job, Luke. But,
Yeah.
Oh, we were on our way and we got lost.
Mm-hmm. Let's make the new guy do it. Eli HS asks why there are so many humans in the Star Wars galaxy. Those pesky humans, they're just everywhere.
I know. And Eli does point out the real world reason is because you don't have to slather a human in makeup. Like, boom, you throw a robe on them, you slap them in the desert, and they're ready to go.
Have them grow a mustache.
Yeah, some 70s sideburns. Like, there, you're a Star Wars person now. But why do they seem to be all around the universe and kind of like the more dominant species? I believe it's because they were one of the first species, at least in Legends, to develop faster than light space travel. They were able to explore the galaxy and colonize worlds earlier than some other species. I know Duros were another species that were colonizing pretty quickly. But I think humans just, they spread out and colonized a lot. Yeah.
It's like saying, why are there so many white people in Europe?
Right. And I'm
They're
sure.
Just there.
I mean, the real reason, yes, is because it was less expensive to just have humans than aliens. But it does kind of work out because George Lucas has talked about imperialism and colonialism and how the empire was supposed to be a condemnation of that and American imperialism. So that kind of works out that it's like humans are just another aspect of that colonialism.
That's it for our patron questions. If you're a patron and you didn't see your question answered here, just head over to Patreon, where we leave every submitted question a written response. If you're not a patron, you can learn more by following the link in the description. We have tons of other rewards like audio commentaries for the films and every new Star Wars series premiering on Disney+. We also record video reactions to every new series as we watch them for the first time. We're doing book clubs to discuss every new Star Wars book as they release. We have behind-the-scenes content, comic reactions every Wednesday, and more. All of that is available right now on our Patreon if you're interested.
On to YouTube questions. Blazecap asks if Dexter Jettster could appear in Obi-Wan Kenobi.
See, we're going back to like that things that we want to see happen in these series. Does it serve the story or not? It could. It could serve the story. I mean, what if Obi-Wan has to go back to Coruscant and he needs his contact who knows so much?
Maybe he has to go to the Rishi maze.
Right.
Who knows it better than Dexter?
Who knows what Obi-Wan is going to have to do? He hasn't been out in the galaxy for 10 years. Everything's changed. But Dexter Jettster still knows everything there is. So it's like, in my mind, is he going to be in it? Very doubtful. But I do think there's a way that it could work. And maybe he doesn't live on Coruscant anymore. Maybe he relocated his diner to some other planet. But man, that would be fun.
Omega Fett wants to know if Fennec Shand is related to Conja Club.
So I think so, because when she was first introduced as a character, people pointed out that in the Force Awakens visual dictionary, there is a member of Conja Club named Crokand Shand.
Oh.
So I don't think they would name a character that unless they had that intention. Not that it's like any huge... It's one of those things that's, if you know, then it's kind of a cool connection, but it doesn't distract anyone at all if they've never heard the name Shand before, which most wouldn't have.
This kind of feels like, to me, if you were to ask a Pantoran if they were a Chiss, like, come on.
Maybe Shand is a very common last name. Shand is also like Antilles, or apparently Skywalker, which I think, speaking of the Chiss, I think Thrawn in one of the books said, apparently Skywalker is like a common name out there, which is why they never bothered to change Luke's last name. So, I think that they were probably trying to make that connection, but it doesn't have to be that way. Kind of like Dryden Voss and Quinlan Voss.
Yeah.
No relation, just the same last name.
Because when they're planning things for Star Wars, so many things get reused. So someone at some point in the planning process could have seen the name Shand somewhere in a reference book, and that just stuck in their head.
Right.
And came back up.
I imagine Jon Favreau probably named Fennec Shand, and it's not like someone's going to go, well, John, we can't use that last name because this one person in the background of The Force Awakens also has that last name.
Right.
It's like maybe they're like, okay, they're related. Or maybe John was trying to brainstorm ideas and someone was like, this could be fun. And he was like, Shand sounds cool.
Matthew Kelly asks if we could see sequel trilogy planets appear in the rumored Old Republic film.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Like, let's just assume at some point we're going to get Old or High Republic or whatever, like more ancient history Star Wars stories. I would love that so much.
Yeah, let's see Octo, Exegol, maybe Canto Bight.
Jeddah.
Yeah.
I'm such a sucker for seeing stuff like that. It's like, okay, we've seen it in ruins. Let's see it in its prime.
Yeah, Jeddah's already been mentioned in the High Republic.
Right.
So.
And we still have yet to see it. But like Takodana, we've seen in the High Republic. Doesn't seem to have changed very much. But yes, I want to see that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, having seen all of those ruins on Jeddah and knowing that it's like a holy city, it would just be so cool to see something like that in its prime when it was just like a bustling city.
And Exegol might have been the same. I mean, we've seen these giant statues on both planets. It would be really interesting to have like Jeddah is like the Jedi's home base and Exegol is the Sith home base, and they're at like all-out war during the Old Republic. Something like that would be really neat.
Tian Shin Fan 44 wants to know if we'll see canon versions of Big Giz and Spiker in the Book of Boba Fett.
So those are characters from Shadows of the Empire, specifically the comic. And they were part of a swoop gang. I think this is popping up because the latest TV spot for the Book of Boba Fett showed kind of those old style swoop bikes, which is awesome. So will we see those specific characters in the Book of Boba Fett? I doubt it, but it would also be kind of easy to do just as like, oh, we need some background characters. And I mean, they do have they would need heavy makeup. So I think they would probably be more likely to just go with a Nikto or a Klaatuini, something they've already done in the live action series. But you never know.
Yeah, I mean, they could just be credited as those names in the end credits, and we can be like, oh, hey, look, they did the thing. The only other thing I thought of was like maybe we would see these names in Arabesh on something.
Just like Big Giz was here on like carved into one of the bikes. Like, oh, he used to own it. Yeah, it could be something simple like the Jaster Muriel reference in Boba Fett's chain code. Mm-hmm. That's all the time we have for questions today. If you want to leave a question for next week's video, just put it in the comments below or sign up for Patreon to join our weekly Q&A discussion and get a guaranteed response. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel.
Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.
And as always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.